He wasn't speeding. He wasn't armed. He was just black, and that was enough. How many more quiet lives have to be shattered before we say enough? Dragged from his car, handcuffed in front of his child, for looking suspicious? This isn't law enforcement. It's humiliation disguised as protocol. How long will we keep calling this justice? The flashing red and blue lights lit up the inside of the car like a strobe, painting Marcus Bell's tense face in pulses of panic. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white, heart pounding. Elijah sat beside him, wide-eyed, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, are they stopping us again?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the rearview mirror, watching the patrol car close in behind him like a predator. The night had been quiet. Too quiet. Just a father and son on their way home from dinner. No speeding. No broken lights. Nothing out of place, except for the color of Marcus's skin. "Just stay calm, son," he said, voice steady but tight. "Keep your hands where they can see them." He pulled over slowly, signaling like he was supposed to. The cruiser pulled up behind, engine rumbling. As the two headlights swallowed them whole, Marcus's mind went elsewhere, back to 1998. He was 17. His first stop. His first humiliation. The officer hadn't even asked for ID. Just yanked him off his bike and threw him against the hood. Said he matched a description. No apology when it turned out Marcus didn't. Just a sneer, and a warning to watch yourself. "Dad!" Elijah's voice again, shaking now. "What if they're mad? What if they think you're someone else?" "They've thought that before," Marcus said, barely above a murmur. "Just breathe. We're gonna be okay." He wasn't sure if he believed it. The door of the cruiser opened. Heavy footsteps on gravel. A flashlight beam cut through the night and landed directly on Marcus's side of the window. He rolled it down slowly, hands still on the wheel. "Evening, sir," the officer said, flat and cold. "Know why I pulled you over?" "No, officer," Marcus replied, calm but clipped. "I wasn't speeding. Signal's working. Brake lights too." The officer didn't respond. Just leaned in closer, scanning the interior like he was hunting for a threat. His eyes landed on Elijah. The boy looked down. Marcus swallowed hard. "This is my son. We're just heading home." The officer nodded, but it wasn't the kind of nod that acknowledged anything. More like a calculation. Another step in a tired dance Marcus had learned too well. "License and registration," the officer said. Marcus complied, slow, deliberate. The air between them thick with tension, unspoken assumptions bleeding through every glance. "Stay in the vehicle," the officer added, stepping back. As the patrolman returned to the cruiser, Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Elijah reached for his hand. "Dad, do they hate us?" Marcus stared at the dashboard, the weight of generations pressing down on him. "They don't know us," he said softly. "But sometimes they don't have to." A long silence filled the car, broken only by the sound of the radio crackling in the cruiser behind them. And in that silence, Marcus understood. Tonight was just another page in the story. A story that had started long before him, and didn't seem ready to end. The next morning, Marcus Bell stood in front of his classroom, whiteboard marker in hand, trying to explain the Emancipation Proclamation to 20 restless teenagers. He spoke clearly, with purpose, as he always did, but his mind lingered on the flashing lights from the night before, on Elijah's trembling voice, on the officer's blank stare. As the students copied notes, Marcus glanced at the classroom clock. Still 15 minutes left. Just enough time to finish the lecture and put his face back together. After the bell rang, one of his students, a bright but blunt sophomore named Carter, approached his desk. "Hey, Mr. Bell, can I ask you something?" Marcus nodded. "Sure, what's up? How come you always get pulled over? My dad says you got stopped last month too. Is that, like, normal?" Marcus paused, forcing a small smile. "Depends who you ask." Carter tilted his head. "My dad said you're a good guy. He doesn't get why the cops mess with you." "Neither do I, Carter," Marcus replied. "But it happens." Carter blinked. "Maybe they think you're someone else." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's usually what they say." Carter shrugged, grabbed his backpack, and left. For him, it was just curiosity. For Marcus, it was a wound dressed up as conversation. Later that afternoon, Marcus walked the familiar path home through the quiet streets of East Lake, Elijah's backpack slung over one shoulder. The neighborhood looked like any other. Neatly trimmed lawns, faded basketball hoops, American flags hanging from porches. But Marcus felt the eyes. Not always obvious. Sometimes it was just a lingering glance from behind a curtain. Other times, it was a neighbor locking their car door a little too quickly. As they passed the corner house, Elijah tugged his sleeve. Why did Mrs. Franklin wave at me but not you? Marcus looked up. The woman across the street had already disappeared inside. Maybe she didn't see me, he said. Elijah frowned. She looked right at you. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't want to explain, not here. Not now. When they got home, Elijah headed to his room. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table, stared at the half-empty coffee pot, and rubbed his temples. He'd done everything right, gotten his degree, stayed out of trouble, gave back to the community. Yet still, every week felt like walking a tightrope, waiting for someone to accuse him of falling. The phone rang. It was his mother, Gloria. You made it home, she asked. Yeah, Ma. Safe and sound. Any trouble? Just the usual. Lights, questions, stares. There was a pause. I used to think if we just played by the rules, they'd leave us alone, Gloria said. But the rules keep changing. Marcus exhaled. Or maybe they were never written for us in the first place. The line went quiet, not out of shock, but recognition. Because Gloria knew. She had lived it. And now her son was living it too, one stop, one stare, one silent dismissal at a time. It was a Wednesday afternoon, bright and dry, when it happened again. Marcus Bell had just wrapped up a parent-teacher meeting and was pulling out of the school parking lot. He had changed into a clean button-down and slacks. He always did for meetings, and his briefcase sat neatly beside him on the passenger seat. The flashing lights came before he even reached the main road. You've got to be kidding me, Marcus muttered, pulling over calmly. His fingers tapped the steering wheel in a steady rhythm. Not panic this time. Just fatigue. Deep, soul-splitting fatigue. The officer approached from behind. Marcus could already tell by the gait, confident, wide stance, that it was Officer Reed Callahan. He'd seen him twice before. Once near the gas station. Once outside a grocery store. Same tone. Same look. The officer leaned down, his face stoic, unreadable. License and registration, he said. Marcus handed them over without a word. You know why I stopped you? Callahan asked. No, officer, Marcus replied, eyes forward. I wasn't speeding. My lights are working. I just left school. Callahan glanced at the ID again. School teacher, huh? Marcus nodded once. Yes, sir. 8th grade history. Right behind us. Callahan scanned the back seat with a slow sweep of his flashlight. You seem tense. Marcus met his eyes. With all due respect, sir, I've been stopped 4 times in 2 months. I have reason to be. Callahan gave a slight smile. It wasn't friendly. You match the description of a suspect we're looking for. Tall black male, short beard, gray sedan. Marcus exhaled through his nose. That could describe 100 people in this neighborhood. But you're the one I saw, Callahan said simply, then stepped back to run the plates. A few teachers walking to their cars looked over. One of them was Coach Darius. He gave a quick nod toward Marcus but didn't walk over. Just watched, awkward, unsure. After 10 long minutes, Callahan returned. You're clear, he said. Just being thorough. Marcus took his papers back. Am I free to go? You are. Marcus started the engine. As he pulled away, he caught Darius's eye in the mirror. The man raised a hand in a half-wave, half-apology. That evening, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, Marcus stared at the laminated ID badge still clipped to his shirt. Elijah sat across from him doing homework. Did they stop you again? The boy asked without looking up. Marcus nodded slowly. They said I matched a description. Elijah frowned. Do they always think you're someone else? Marcus hesitated. No. Sometimes they know exactly who I am. And they still stop me. He looked at his son, saw the fear starting to curl behind those young eyes. He wanted to say something to erase it, to fix it, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was louder than comfort. It had happened again, and it wouldn't be the last. It was late evening when Marcus Bell pulled into the narrow driveway of his mother's home. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow across the front steps, like it always had when he was a child. He turned off the engine, sat in the silence for a moment, and then stepped out into the cool air. Inside, Gloria Bell was already pouring tea. She'd been expecting him. You look tired, she said, handing him a steaming mug. I am, Marcus replied, sinking into the old armchair by the window. It happened again. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. Reed Callahan? She asked. Marcus nodded. Gloria sat across from him, her face lined not just by age, but by experience, decades of it. Marches, tear gas, bat and bruises, a lifetime of pushing against a wall that never seemed to budge. You know, she said, When I was your age, they didn't even pretend. No fake reasons. No matched description. Just nightsticks and dogs. Marcus looked at her, eyes heavy. At least back then, the hate had a name. Now it hides behind paperwork. Gloria took a long sip of tea. Same hate. New uniforms. There was a beat of silence between them, not awkward, but deep. Familiar. Inherited. I remember the first time it happened to me, she continued. Birmingham. 1969. I was walking home from my job at the diner. A cop car pulled up, said I looked out of place. Pushed me against the hood, cracked 2 ribs. No charges. No apology. Just walked away like I was trash. Marcus clenched his jaw. And they wonder why we don't trust the system. They don't wonder, Gloria said. They know. They just don't care. He set the mug down, leaned forward, elbows on knees. I keep thinking, maybe if I dress right, speak right, carry myself right, they'll leave me alone. Gloria shook her head slowly. Baby, the problem's not your tone. It's their lens. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Neither of them flinched. Too many years. Too many echoes. Marcus rubbed his temples. Elijah's asking questions. Hard ones. Ones I can't answer without breaking something in him. You don't have to lie to protect him, she said. But you don't have to give him the whole burden either. Not yet. He looked at her, eyes glistening. You think it'll ever change? Gloria leaned back, hands folded in her lap. Maybe not in my lifetime. Maybe not in yours. But if we don't speak, if we don't stand, we're just handing them our silence. Marcus sat with that. Not in agreement. Not in resistance. Just sitting, letting her words settle. He'd always thought the past was something behind him. But now, it felt like it had simply passed him the baton. The rain had just started when Marcus Bell left the school building that evening. Fat drops tapped against his windshield as he pulled out of the parking lot, the street lamps casting long shadows on the wet pavement. It had been a long day. Parent conferences, grading papers, and a lingering conversation with the principal about classroom funding cuts. His mind was tired. All he wanted was to get home, heat up leftovers, and check on Elijah's science project. He never made it that far. Just a block from the school, flashing lights lit up behind him, again. Marcus's stomach turned, not in surprise, but in bitter expectation. He pulled over, turned off the engine, and placed both hands on the wheel. He didn't need to look in the mirror to know who it was. Officer Reed Callahan approached the driver's side, already unbuckling his holster. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered without explanation. Marcus furrowed his brow. Is there a problem, officer? You match a description, Callahan replied flatly. I'm a teacher, Marcus said. I just left work. My ID's in the glove compartment. Step out. Now. Marcus complied, slowly opening the door and stepping into the rain. His shirt clung to his chest as Callahan spun him around and pressed him against the hood. The cold metal shocked his skin. A second cruiser pulled up. Another officer exited, young, nervous-looking, stayed silent. Marcus tried again. Please. My name is Marcus Bell. I teach at Jefferson Middle School. My son is home alone. Hands where I can see them, Callahan barked, ignoring every word. They cuffed him right there, in the rain, like a criminal. No Miranda rights. No explanation. Just assumptions and force. For 6 hours, Marcus sat in a holding cell, wet clothes sticking to him, surrounded by the sound of buzzing fluorescent lights and shuffling footsteps. No one told him why he was there. No one told him when he could leave. Eventually, a plainclothes officer came in and unlocked the cell door. Mr. Bell, he said stiffly, you're free to go. There was a mistake. Marcus stared at him, expressionless. Mistake? Yes. Wrong person. The suspect had a different license plate. You were close. Marcus stood slowly, his knees stiff from the cold bench. He didn't say a word. Not then. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside, something had cracked. When he got home, Elijah was asleep on the couch, homework spread out around him like a shield. Marcus sat beside him, brushing a hand gently over the boy's curls. He whispered, not to wake him, but to admit it out loud. I can't keep doing this. I won't. He stood, walked to the kitchen, opened his laptop. For the first time, he began to write, every stop, every humiliation, every name, every badge number. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was time to speak. The next morning, Marcus Bell sat at the kitchen table, the dim light of dawn creeping through the blinds. His laptop was open, a blank document staring back at him. Elijah was still asleep in the next room, curled up under a blanket, unaware of the storm brewing inside his father. Marcus's hands hovered over the keyboard. He didn't know where to begin, but he knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. He started typing. First, the stop near the grocery store, then the one outside the school. Each incident flowed out, not just as memory, but as weight being lifted. He wrote the names of the officers, the dates, the words they used, the cold silences, the humiliation. By the time the sun fully rose, he had filled 10 pages. His fingers ached, but he kept going. It wasn't just therapy. It was testimony. Later that day, during his prep period, Marcus printed the document and brought it to Coach Darius. "Read this," he said, dropping the stack on the desk. Darius picked it up slowly, flipping through the pages. His eyes widened. "This all happened to you?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "All of it." Darius leaned back in his chair. "Damn, man. I knew things were bad, but I didn't know it was like this." "That's the problem," Marcus replied. "Nobody knows, or they pretend not to." Darius looked uncomfortable. "You thinking of doing something with this?" "I already did," Marcus said. "I posted it online this morning. The whole thing. Every detail." Darius blinked. "You serious?" "Dead serious." By lunchtime, the post had already been shared hundreds of times. By evening, thousands. Messages flooded in, some supportive, others angry, a few threatening. But most were from people who had lived through the same thing. Teachers, nurses, retirees, teenagers, all black, all tired. That night, Gloria called. "I saw it," she said. Marcus waited, unsure of what she'd say. "I'm proud of you," she finally added. "You said what I never could, what I was too scared to say out loud." "It's not bravery, Ma," he said. "It's survival with teeth. You might have started something bigger than you think." Marcus sighed. "Let's hope it doesn't end with me." Meanwhile, at the city precinct, Detective Sarah Munoz sat alone in her office, scrolling through her phone. She paused when she saw Marcus's name attached to the post. She clicked. She read. She remembered the stop. She had been there. She had stood back and said nothing. Her stomach turned. Back at home, Marcus refreshed the page. The numbers climbed, tens of thousands of views. Comments pouring in. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory. It was a fire, and fires always cost something. Elijah walked into the room, rubbing his eyes. "You're still up?" he asked. Marcus closed the laptop. "Yeah," he said. "I had something I needed to say." He placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "And now it's out there." The following week moved faster than Marcus Bell had expected. What started as a quiet act of defiance from his kitchen table had taken on a life of its own. His story had been picked up by local news, then state outlets, then national ones. Journalists called his phone nonstop. Emails poured in from civil rights groups, educators, and complete strangers. The numbers on his post kept climbing. But what struck him most were the stories people shared back. They weren't just commenting. They were confessing. A retired black mailman who'd been stopped 37 times. A young mother whose son was handcuffed outside his high school for matching a vague description. A black pastor who kept a change of clothes in his car to avoid looking threatening. Each story chipped away at the lie that Marcus had grown up hearing. That if you worked hard, stayed polite, followed the rules, you'd be safe. He knew better now. Safety wasn't promised. Silence wasn't protection. And fear had turned to purpose. That Saturday, the community center held a town hall. The room filled quickly. Neighbors, teachers, clergy, students, and even a few off-duty police officers. The air buzzed with anticipation and quiet tension. Marcus stood at the front, his heart pounding. Elijah sat in the front row beside Gloria, who gave a subtle nod of encouragement. Marcus took a breath and stepped up to the mic. "My name is Marcus Bell," he began, voice steady. "I'm a teacher, a father, and a black man who's been stopped by police more times than I can count. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about us." He spoke of the fear, the humiliation, the exhaustion. But more than that, he spoke of the hope he saw, how one voice had sparked hundreds more. His voice didn't shake. He didn't hide his anger. But he didn't drown in it either. The audience was silent at first. Then came the applause. Not polite clapping, but full, sustained, rising applause. People stood. People cried. In the back of the room, Detective Sarah Munoz leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. When Marcus locked eyes with her, she didn't look away. After the event, she approached him outside under the glow of a parking lot light. "I read everything," she said. "And I remember that stop. I was there. I didn't say anything. Marcus studied her face. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't see it," she replied. "And because your words made it impossible to keep looking away." She handed him a manila folder. "Internal reports. The ones they never filed. You'll want to read these." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him holding the truth in his hands. Marcus stood there for a moment, then looked toward the building. People were still lingering, still talking, still ready. The ripple had become a wave. And Marcus Bell wasn't just riding it. He was leading it. 2 weeks after the town hall, Marcus Bell sat alone in his living room, the glow of his laptop casting sharp shadows across his face. The manila folder from Detective Sarah Munoz lay open beside him, its contents spread out across the table like pieces of a broken promise. Internal memos, incident reports that had never been filed, notes from officers who had raised concerns, only to be silenced. It was all there, proof that what had happened to him wasn't an isolated mistake, it was part of a pattern. His phone buzzed. Another interview request. Another message of support. Another anonymous threat. The wave he had helped create was still growing, but now it had a cost. That week, someone spray-painted "traitor" in red across his classroom door. A parent filed a complaint accusing him of dividing the students with racial politics. A fellow teacher whispered that he was making everyone uncomfortable. The school board called him in for a performance review. Marcus sat through it calmly, answering each question with the same quiet confidence he had brought to every lecture he ever gave. Afterward, Coach Darius found him in the staff lounge. "They're scared," Darius said, sitting beside him. "Of me?" Marcus asked, incredulous. "No, of the truth you're forcing them to see." Marcus nodded slowly. "Truth makes people choose sides. Some of us are already on yours," Darius replied. "We just needed someone to lead." That night, Marcus went home to find Gloria waiting on the porch. She held 2 mugs of coffee, still steaming. "They're coming for you now," she said as he sat down beside her. "I know. You ready for that?" He looked at her, eyes weary but steady. "I wasn't. But I am now." Gloria took a sip, then looked out into the night. "You know, when I marched in '68, I thought we were changing the world. But maybe we were just buying time for someone like you." Marcus didn't reply. He just reached for her hand, and they sat together, 2 generations joined by the same fight. The following day, the city council announced a formal review of police traffic stop procedures. Reed Callahan was placed on unpaid suspension pending investigation. The mayor called for a community oversight board. It wasn't justice, not fully, but it was a beginning. That evening, Marcus and Elijah went for a drive, just the 2 of them. The sun was setting, casting gold across the hood of the car. As they drove through quiet streets, Elijah looked up from the passenger seat. "Dad," he said softly, "do you think they'll stop you again?" Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "Maybe." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "Are you scared?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Not anymore. Not if I know you'll be watching." They drove on in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because for the first time in a long while, silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like strength. And somewhere, deep in that quiet, a new chapter had already begun. What Marcus Bell's story teaches us is not just about injustice. It's about the cost of silence and the power of finally speaking out. For years, he did everything society told him to do. Stay calm, follow the rules, be respectable. And still, he was stopped, humiliated, even handcuffed in front of his own son. All because of the color of his skin. At first, he swallowed the pain like so many before him. He told himself to endure, to survive. But there came a point, a breaking point, when survival wasn't enough. And when Marcus chose to speak, when he laid bare the quiet war he'd been fighting every day, something shifted. Not just in him, but in those around him. The silence that protected injustice cracked, and light started to pour through. It wasn't easy. The backlash was real. He lost comfort. He faced threats. But in return, he gained something greater, solidarity. From neighbors who had once stayed quiet, from police who could no longer ignore what they had seen, and from his own son, who looked at him not with fear, but with pride. This story reminds us that change does not come without cost. It demands discomfort. It demands truth. But if we wait for someone else to speak first, the silence wins. Marcus didn't change the world overnight, but he made a crack in the wall. And sometimes that's all it takes to start a movement. So ask yourself, what are you still quiet about? And what would happen if you finally said it out loud? Because someone out there is waiting for your voice to give them permission to use theirs. If you've ever witnessed or experienced a moment where someone was treated unfairly because of their skin color, how did it make you feel? And what did you do? Do you believe speaking out can truly make a difference, or is silence sometimes the safer choice? Share your thoughts in the comments, like if this story moved you, and pass it on if you believe it needs to be heard. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Like the video to show your support, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth, and subscribe to Unlocking Chains for more powerful stories that challenge injustice and inspire real change. Your voice helps keep these stories alive,